And good morning, everyone. Pastor Paul here for Pastor Paul's Bible Talk. Glad you're with me this morning as we talk about the Bible. That's why we call it Bible Talk. And I'm glad you're here. I'm recording this live this morning, and so you're welcome to join in on YouTube. I'm trying to record these ahead of time for Saturday so I can give myself a Saturday off from time to time. And it's partly why my wife and I have quit doing our lives every Saturday, because we just need some breaks from the screen time. But we're going to work that out and see how all that goes as we keep moving forward. But the week was just really impacted this week. And so I decided that I would record it live today. I also recorded live last week because I recorded my Bible Talk and somehow forgot to put the sound on it. So that happened. So welcome to those of you watching this as I record it live. And welcome to those of you who will watch it as it's preserved on YouTube and brought out as a podcast. Pastor Paul's Bible Talk. This is where I do my Bible teaching. A lot of times I do current events talk or something else, but this is where I like to do my Bible teaching. And so today we're going to talk about a church that has lost its mind set. That's why a little play on words, because I do think the American evangelical church has lost its mind. And the reason it's losing its mind is because it's lost its mindset. It doesn't understand what's happening in the season. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about where this came from. I did a podcast this week, our weekly podcast that was released every Thursday. We release a new podcast under the moniker today of the Nonpartisan Evangelical. But I think that will be changing up very soon as we sort of work on a rebranding of us. But every week we release that podcast. And my podcast this week was a very vulnerable and raw one. And I did some TikToks to support it about religious trauma in my life and the trauma of growing up in a religious pastor's household. And, you know, we always make jokes about being pastors' kids and those of us who are, or missionary kids. And we kind of make jokes. I'm a PK or I'm an MK. And it's really been coming home to roost for me as I've just been continually doing work on my emotional and spiritual health, that, hey, it's not a laughing matter. It actually is a real thing, that religious trauma exists. And again, as I said in the podcast this week, it's not because I had terrible parents. They were doing the best they could, but because this mindset of evangelical religion tells us this is how we're supposed to be. And so my fear of doing that very vulnerable podcast was that I would have friends in the evangelical church or the trolls that follow me on social media who would come on and say, see, I knew it. You know, Paul, the things you're saying about the evangelical church are because you're hurt, not because they're valid. It's a you issue, not a me issue. It's what we do to abusers and trauma survivors, to abuse survivors and trauma survivors in America. We blame the victim. And in the church, we do even worse. We say, you need to honor the other people in the church. So you, the victim, you need to go make it right. Or if it's your parents, you need to honor your mother and father so you can have long life. We literally tell the victims of trauma and abuse, you need to go make it right with your abuser and those that have victimized you. And again, I'm not saying, I most of the time, I believe most of these victims and abusers are fully unaware of what they're doing. And somebody very close to me this week told a group of people, Paul's fallen away. We need to pray for him. There's a lot going on. He's not a Christian anymore. He hates evangelicals. And this person then found out that I heard about this and called me, and we had a wonderful conversation, which I appreciate it. But it's just been making me mull over, like, what has given us the right as Christians to be so mean-spirited to others? What gives us the right? And not only gives us the right, but believing we're doing it for God. The trolls on my TikTok page believe they're doing God's work by coming on and calling me names and saying false teacher and wolf in sheep's clothing and all the things, all the little patronizing lines that we get. What made us there? And so I did what I normally do. I go to the Bible and say, where did we see this? And I'll just tell you, I'll go to the end. Here's the reason: because we're still clinging to an old mindset. And when you start clinging to an old mindset, your ability to hold on to that mindset starts to wear down. And when that wears down, all you have is to hold on to the traditions of that mindset. And you have to fight for those traditions at all cost. And the cost generally is people. You're willing to throw people away to protect that tribal mindset. And I'll show you where I see that in the Bible. And I'll tell you right now what the remedy is. Again, a verse you're going to hear me quote again and again and again. And I think it may be one of the most important verses in all of the Bible. And it's Romans 12:2 that says, don't be conformed to this age. And be very careful. Christians always say, no, that's world. Don't be conformed to the world. That means don't be conformed to that world outside the church. No, it says don't be conformed to this age is what the real translation of that is. And I believe if we were writing that verse today, we would say, don't be conformed to the mindset in which you live. Don't be conformed to the bubble that you've always known. Don't be stuck in your echo chamber, but be transformed. So don't stay the same, be transformed. And most Christians believe that transform means I prayed a sinner's prayer and now I'm good forevermore. But this verse says, don't be conformed to the age in which you live, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And if you look at the translation of that verse, it's the ongoing renewal of your mind. It's not a one-time event. It is an ongoing thing. I have to have my mind renewed again and again and again. And it says so that you can know the good and perfect will of God. So what that verse is saying is we need to challenge our mindsets, even on a daily basis. Is what I'm believing really right for this next season? It may have been good for years ago. It may have been good for decades ago. Some of it was good for hundreds of years ago and should have gone away a long time ago. But if we cling to that old mindset, all we have are the traditions of my tribe that's built around that. And I defend that at all cost. And the cost is often people. I'm willing to throw people under the bus to protect my tribe. And it's really what I believe we're seeing happening in our culture today is that need to defend our tribe, particularly evangelical Christians, my people, the people that I know best, defending our tribe and making our tribe be in power, even politically, like to impose our religion on others through political power has become the priority and people have become second. Now, we do things to like fight that off. We do backpack drives and homeless drives and mission trips. And we say, look at us, look at how much we care about people. But our heart is being revealed in this season that our tribal traditions mean way more to us than do people. And so let me show you where I see this in the Bible. And I did a modern day parable. I love to take the Bible and tell it into modern stories. And so I'm going to talk about Numbers 13 and 14 in my Bible talk today. And I made a modern day parable about it. And so I want to show that to you to start us off here. And let me make sure I do that well. Someday I'll have a producer do all of this for me, and that'll be so awesome. But as of now, it's all me. And so let me see if I can figure out how to do that. I want to share audio, and we go to Pastor Paul's TikTok page. There we go. And here it is. I need to turn on the audio. Too long we've been blocked. New church, old church, a modern day parable. A church with a shrinking, aging membership appointed a committee of 12 men to study what they could do to start to grow again in the future. The committee called the people together and the young guys went first. It's amazing. We've seen what can happen. Young people could start coming into the church. We could start having an impact on the community around us and we could grow our membership. The people were thrilled at what they were hearing. But then the older guys on the committee got up and they said, yeah, we could do that, but here's what's going to happen. The look of the church will have to change. Its music will have to change. We'll even have to rearrange the seats and even teach about race and climate and other cultural things. And they want us to allow those people into the building. The people decided to vote the young guys off the committee. They stayed the same, shrunk, and eventually died off. It's the story of the American Evangelical Church. New church. That it is. It's the story of the church today. That hearing that modern day parable makes me very sad. It's our need to cling to our tribal beliefs rather than care about people. So I want to talk about where we see this in the Bible, and we're going to go to the book of Numbers in the Old Testament, chapter 13 and 14. And let me tell you what's happening here. You've probably seen, any version of the story of Moses and the Red Sea and the parting of the Red Sea and the Egyptian army coming behind them and getting swallowed up by the sea. And so all of that has happened now in our Bible story. And the purpose, what God was saying is, I'm going to take you out of slavery in Egypt. He tells this group of people known as the Hebrews, and where you've been slaves for 400 years, and I'm going to take you to this new promised land. And it's the space now where Israel, the nation of Israel, says this land belongs to us because God promised it to us. And that's sort of the battle. And the people that don't believe the Hebrew Bible or the Christian Bible are like, well, just because you wrote it in a book doesn't mean you get it, So that's kind of the battle over in the Middle East. But they traveled for a couple of years, were given the 10 commandments, built the golden calf, did all those things. And now they're right at the edge of the promised land. They're standing on this side of the Jordan River, and the promised land is on the other side. And so Moses sends in a group of spies, a dozen of them, to go spy out the land and say, does it look like God said it was going to look? Come back and give us a report of what it looks like. And when the spies are in the land, they find that it's like Central California. In fact, the weather of Central California, where I live, is exactly like the climate of Israel. And we grow amazing fruits and vegetables. And, if you get a raisin, it's from where I live in Central California. If you get a grape or even wine that's made from grapes, there's a good chance some of it is made, a large part of it is made right here in Central California. And almonds and kiwis and you name it. We grow it here. And that's what this land was like. And it even says in the Bible that they found a cluster of grapes that was so big, it took 2 men to carry it on a stick between them. And so now that group of a dozen spies is coming back to give their report to the people. And that's where we pick up our story in Numbers chapter 13, as Moses sent them in and they're coming back to make their report. So Numbers 13, verse 25, let me read a little bit of the Bible here to you, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how the church has lost its mindset. At the end of 40 days, they returned from spying out the land, it says in Numbers 13, verse 25, and they came to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation of the people of Israel in the wilderness at Paran Kadesh. They brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. And they told them, we came to the land which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey. That just means it's a really prosperous land. And this is its fruit. However, the people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there, these big, gigantic guys, probably like 6 foot tall back in that time in history. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the Negev, the Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites, all kinds of ites in there dwell in the hill country. And the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the Jordan. But Caleb, one of the 2 young guys that were sent with the spies in, Caleb quieted the people, it says in verse 30, before Moses and said, let us go up at once and occupy it, for we are well able to overcome it. The young guy comes back and he says, it's amazing. Look at the fruit. This is going to be incredible. And the people are like, yeah. Oh my gosh, this sounds great. We're going to get young people to come into the church. We're going to grow. We're going to make a difference in the world around us. But there's always a but in the crowd, isn't there? The men who had gone up with Caleb, verse 31, said, we are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we are. We cannot overcome these obstacles. We cannot change to gather the promise of God. Verse 32, so they brought to the people of Israel a bad report of the land that they had spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone to spy it out is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people that we saw in it are of great height. And then we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who came from the Nephilim, and we seemed like ourselves to be grasshoppers in their presence. So the young guys, Caleb and Joshua, come back and say, whoa, this is amazing. This land is going to be incredible. You guys aren't going to believe it when you see it. Let's go, as my son likes to say, let's go. And the people are like, yeah, come on, let's go. And then there's the old guys, the wise old soldiers, the ones who have been through the slavery, and they really know more than what Caleb and Joshua know, because those young guys, they just haven't had the experience. They don't know like these wise men do. And they're like, wait a second. Yes, the promise is amazing. Yes, if we do the hard work, we're going to get something really incredible. But it's a lot of work. And we're going to have to engage in things that we don't like to do. And it's going to be hard. And you know what? We're slaves. Are we really even worthy to have such a land? The mindset of the people who had been enslaved for 400 years and who were just in survival mode, and just every day we're like, okay, we've got to make the bricks today to survive today, and get just enough leeks and onions to survive. And then maybe tomorrow we'll be able to survive tomorrow. That had been their history. That's all they had known in their life. They'd just been told stories of a mindset that was different than that. They had just heard hints that it could be different than what they'd always known. And when they get to the promise, they're like, yes, this is amazing, but we're going to have to change our belief about ourselves for it to come to fruition. And that's a river we're not willing to cross. And so in their wisdom, they talked the people out of hope. Does that happen in our churches today? Yes, we could have young people coming into the church, but it's going to require us to change our mindset. And the boomer generation is like, hell no. Nope. In fact, we're so ingrained that mindset, we'll do anything to keep it, including taking our tithes away from the church and voting reprehensible people for office, because it's really important to us that our mindset, our tribal traditions stay intact and in charge if we can impose it on other people. Do you see the parallel? So let's go on to chapter 14. So here's what happens when we start clinging to that old mindset and start defending, feeling that need to defend our tribal tradition rather than have hope in people, particularly young people who are coming with these newfangled crazy ideas. We get pretty pissed off about it. And let's look at that in Numbers chapter 14. It says, all of the congregation raised a loud cry, and the people wept that night, and all the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. So we always start to say, anybody that changes, anybody that's talking a new way, they must have fallen away. They must have, maybe they've never been called of God to be our leader at all. Maybe we should just get rid of them altogether. Maybe we need to make an explanation of why their mindset is changing and ours isn't. The whole congregation said to Moses and Aaron, would that we had died in the land of Egypt. We'd rather be dead than have to do this mindset shift work of procuring the promise of a better world in front of us. Would that we had died in the wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the swords? Let us choose a leader and go back to Egypt. We would rather be in slavery than have to change our mindset and work hard to see a new day come for our people. So Moses goes to God and begins to pray and says, God, forgive our people of having this need to defend this old mindset. And while all of that is happening, this is what the congregation decides to do. And this is what the Church of America does today to people who disagree with that mindset. Verse 10 of Numbers 14, then all the congregation said to stone Joshua and Caleb with stones. And I skipped the part of the passage where Caleb again and Joshua again tried to say, wait, guys, let's not go insane. What are you talking about? There's a new day ahead. All we have to do is change our belief system and go and get the most of, look at these grapes. Look at the opportunity ahead of us. Isn't that amazing? And the people are like, we're going to kill you. We're going to kill you. And And this, I believe, is the heart of the evangelical church today, because we so have to cling to our mindset. We so have to cling to the tenets and traditions of our interpretation of the Bible that anybody that says different, we have to kill them. We have to stone them. And we don't pick up stones and do it anymore. What we do is we use things like, they've fallen away. They've backslidden. In fact, maybe they were never Christians at all. They don't understand the Bible. They don't know God. They're not praying anymore. They're hurt. Those are the stones we pick up and throw at people with new beliefs and mindsets in the church today. Isn't it true? All the congregation said to stone Joshua and Caleb, but the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of meeting to all the people of Israel. And this is what God tells Moses, like, okay, I'm going to still take care of you people, but you're not going to get to go into the promise. You're never going to see the promise in this generation. This generation is going to have to march around the desert till they all pass away. And then the next generation will go in to the promised land. So God says, none of these people are going in. But in verse 24 of Numbers 14 is this amazing promise. But my servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit. And spirit is about, in Hebrew, they would talk about testing their kidneys. In the book of Jeremiah, it says, I, the Lord, test your kidneys. And we translate that as heart in the Bible now, but it's literally kidneys. It's the seat of the emotions. And it says, because Caleb displays this different ability to understand what's happening in the season, because he has a different spirit, it says, and has followed me fully, not just bought a part of who God is and a part of what God says that fits the narrative, but all of who God is, has followed me fully, I will bring Caleb into the land into which he went, and his descendants shall possess it. So God says, these people who are clinging to this old mindset, they're not going to get to see the promises of the season fulfilled. But Caleb, because he's willing to let his mindset be changed and follow me fully, even though he may not understand everything and he may have to violate some of the tribal customs, he's going to get to go in. Isn't that amazing? Changing our mindsets is hard. It takes intentional work, but the reward is amazing. And the desire to live in the status quo and just continue to be what we've always known, because that's where our comfort is deadly and sad. It makes me grieve even thinking about it. I talked this week in TikTok about the book of Lamentations, is Jeremiah saying, oh my gosh, my people are so lost. And I just feel like Jeremiah so often. I'm lamenting who we've become. Let me take a quick break here and tell you a couple of things we've got going on. First, if you're one of those people who has fallen away, if I may use that term, and you don't have a faith community anymore, let me invite you to our Sunday community. We do a faith community online on Sunday mornings, and it's a really fun thing. We share life together. We follow in the Christian tradition of taking communion. We don't require you to be a part of our religious system to do it. So come join us, the Sunday community, online on Sunday mornings, 10 o'clock Pacific. We start. For those who like worship music and kind of worshiping together, there's a group that gets together at 9:30. We do it via Zoom. You can also watch it right here on the Pastor Paul YouTube channel, or we stream it live on TikTok. Now, TikTok doesn't let you stream anything live from another source into it. So all I can do is put up TikTok live and point my camera at the screen. So it's very low quality production, but some people have found they like doing it through TikTok and don't feel very comfortable to be in the room. If you go to my Linktree bio on YouTube or on TikTok, it'll have a link so you can join us in the Zoom room, or you can go to pastor-paul.com and it'll tell you how to join us there. So that's one thing I wanted to tell you, to invite you to come join us in our Sunday community. And then one other thing is I want to give you an opportunity to be a part of supporting the work we do here at Pastor Paul and the Nonpartisan Evangelical. This is what I do for a living. I don't pass a tithe plate. I don't ask people to give support money like a normal missionary would do, or a pastor who's not working in a traditional church. I sell subscriptions. Now, if you are like, I just want to give a one-time gift, there's if you're seeing on the screen on YouTube, there's my Venmo. You can just point your Apple phone right at that QR code there, or you see my Venmo name on the screen, and you can just Venmo a gift. And some of you have been doing that this week, and I really appreciate it. Thank you to Mike and his family for donating through Venmo this week. Or what I really love is selling subscriptions and building a community of people who are built around this message that God is not mad at you. We want to expand that message. And to do that, we're doing a rebrand work with an image person and seeing how we can grow our social media presence to spread this message. And to do that, it's going to cost us about $12,000 building a new website, doing a whole bunch of stuff that not only supports my message as Pastor Paul, but also my coaching, which is a mindset shift work. And so you can help support that by joining Patreon. So that's that lower QR code on the screen, and just point your camera at it, or go to patreon.com/NPE podcast. That's Nonpartisan Evangelical, NPE, patreon.com/NPE podcast. And I'll just love you for it. And we're almost at 100 patrons now. I'm going to celebrate big time when I think I'm about 3 people short of 100 patrons. But our goal is to get 1,000 patrons at $5.99 a month. That's the level you can start at. You can go more than that. If you join at $12.99 a month, I'll send you an autographed copy of my novel. And by joining at the $5.99 a month level, you get access to the audiobook version of my novel. It's the only place you can get the audiobook version. So some good stuff and things. I write blogs that I only show to the patron community. You get some special access to me. We do special meetings from time to time. So if all of that sounds cool, or if you just love the message that God is not mad at you, world, then join our NPE Patreon community. And I'll just so appreciate it. You guys are amazing, and you send me encouraging messages, and it all means so much. So thank you for your support of the work of Pastor Paul and the Nonpartisan Evangelical podcast. So thank you for letting me do that short stint of commercial there. Now back to our Bible talk. So we've seen what happens when a group of people starts to cling to their traditions and are unwilling to let go of, looking forward and what can be. And I want to show you one other example of this in the Bible. Oh, I love coffee. Don't you love coffee? Jonah chapter 4, in my mind, should be... Sorry, let me go this way first. This is what Jesus had to say about that idea. So we're looking in the Old Testament. We see the Israelites, and they're saying, we've been slaves for 400 years. We can't change that mindset. And God says, you're right. So I'm going to have to let this generation just flounder in what they believe. And I actually believe this is what's happening in our season, that God is telling a generation of the church, well, I can't help you. You've made your choice of where you want to be. So I'm going to let you flounder. And it's going to destroy some things in the process. And then when this generation is no longer an impediment to my promise, I will bestow that on the next generation. And I truly believe the millennials are that generation of promise, where God has said, I had a promise for the boomers, but now I'm going to transfer that to the millennials. And that's what I think we see happen. And so we see this happening in Jesus' day as well. There was a group of religious people, one group called the Pharisees, the other the Sadducees, and through varying degrees of belief, they were like the evangelicals today, clinging to a tribal tradition, believing their race, their religion, their nationality was what would put God's purpose forth on the earth. And so they gave themselves permission to hate Samaritans, to hate sinners, to hate tax collectors. And then here comes along this Jesus, and he's sitting with those people, and they're like, what's wrong with this rabbi? He's supposed to be one of us, and he's calling us out, and he's making us look bad. And like Joshua and Caleb, he's talking about this promise that comes with a mindset shift that we are not willing to make. And so we're going to have to kill him. And this is what Jesus said about this. He was talking to his disciples, and they're like, "Why do you always talk in parables?" And he said, "I do that because when I talk this way, those people, they're not going to understand." And it's really, I kind of kick myself on TikTok sometimes because I engage too much with the trolls. What I really need to understand is when you're so ingrained in that mindset, in that evangelical tribal mindset that you're defending, you're not going to be able to see truth. Like literally your eyes are blocked and your mind fogged from hearing the truth of it. And this is what Jesus said about this, about that group of people. He says, "I speak to them in parables." This is Matthew 13, verse 13. "I speak to them," those religious people, "in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. Indeed, in their case, the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled that says, you will indeed hear, but never understand. You will indeed see, but never perceive. For this people's heart has grown dull, and with their eyes they can barely hear. Their eyes have closed, lest they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and turn, and I would heal them, says the Lord. But blessed," says Jesus to the people sitting around him, "blessed are your eyes, for your eyes see, and your ears hear. For truly I say to you, many prophets and righteous people longed to see what you see and did not see it, and to hear what you hear and did not hear it." Jesus is telling the people, like, I talk in the parables because those sinners, they get it. But these religious people who are stuck in this old mindset and are unwilling to challenge their heart and be transformed by the renewing of their mind, they can't see it. So when I tell a parable, they'll never get it because living in that mindset has made it impossible for them to see anything that disagrees with what they believe. They have to fight for their old agreement at all points. And so that's what we're seeing, I believe, in this season. And I'm saying this somewhat prophetically, if you will. I believe we're seeing a church that can fully get behind a guy like Donald Trump and believe QAnon conspiracy theories, because Isaiah chapter 6 says, if you're not willing to have the fire of heaven touch you from time to time and change your mindset, transform you by the renewing of your mind so you can see the good and perfect will of God, you're going to cling to something old, and it's going to dull your mind and block your ears. And you do it long enough, you make that decision long enough, you'll never be able to see the new thing that God is doing in a season. And that's exactly what I believe is happening in evangelicalism and in other parts of Christianity. But I talk about evangelicals because those are my people. We refuse to see anything that's different than ours. And because God is changing in the season, God is showing himself in a new aspect, that generation is fighting harder than ever to preserve its tribal identity and tribal understanding. And so they cannot see truth. And so when somebody comes along with a QAnon conspiracy to try to say, you get to be in power because everybody else around you is evil and killing babies, you start to say, yeah, I think that's true. I think we need to pick up some rocks and start killing some people. It's what's happened in religion all through history. And the people that Jesus was talking about, the religious leaders, the good people of culture, the Little League baseball coaches and the Girl Scout troop masters, and those people of Jesus' day, they see what Jesus is doing, hanging out with those people. Like I said in the modern day parable, those people are supposed to come into our church. We're supposed to believe in these other things like climate change and racial issues we're supposed to dive into and really think about if we're racist or not. Hell no, we'll not think about that. And the Pharisees said this, if he keeps doing what he's doing, we're going to lose our political power and we're going to lose our religious power. They literally say in Luke chapter 11, I think it is. Gosh, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. They say if he keeps on doing what he's doing, the Romans are going to come. The politically oppressive government people are going to come. They were the original conspiracy theorists, the Pharisees. They're going to come and they will take our temple and take our country. So thus, we're going to have to kill Jesus. And you know what? We may even have to kill Lazarus, because him being alive and raised from the dead really speaks badly towards us and good towards Jesus. So we're going to have to justify even murder. We're going to have to pick up stones and kill the people who are coming against our tribal tradition. And he said, though, those of you who are willing to allow your mindset to be changed. At one point, the disciples even turned to Jesus and they're like, we don't get it. We don't get what you're saying. It seems wrong. Everybody else is leaving Jesus because what you're saying is so weird and out of our grid. But we've made the decision that we're going with you whether we understand it or not. And I believe that when Jesus said, blessed are your eyes for they see and your ears for they hear, he's talking today to those of us who are willing to say, maybe some of the things I've been taught as a kid aren't truth. It's my story of believing the religious trauma and the shame and the fear of being left behind was my fault because I was bad, because the Bible told me so. Well, no, it doesn't, Paul. John 3:16 says, God so loved the world, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but still Adam's sin of eating that apple is so powerful. I'm under the influence of that. Even if I pray a prayer that says, Jesus, become my Lord and Savior, I'm still under the influence of Adam and so evil. And so, Paul, if you're feeling religious trauma, it's because you're just a sinful, dirt-made being. And if you're not careful, you can be good today and ready to be taken in the rapture, but tomorrow you might not be because you looked at the wrong magazine cover in the magazine rack. You listened to the wrong rock and roll song on the radio. Your hair got a little bit too long. You went bowling or went to the movies or went to a dance. And Jesus is now ashamed of you before God. And if you start to say anything differently, we'll have to destroy you and declare you fallen away because we have to defend our tribal belief system. And so what happened to me is I began to look around and first begin to feel like, man, I want to have hope in the world. And this right-wing media I follow and this right-wing mindset I follow really steals my hope. So I'm going to kind of push away from that right-wing media so I can start to be a person speaking hopefulness in my Christianity. And I looked around, I'm like, man, our family really thought John Lennon was a terrible man and really maybe even deserved to be shot. Although we wouldn't say that out loud, but you live that way, the devil will get you eventually. I mean, I even heard pastors say that. But I started looking and listening to John Lennon's music and what he had to say, and I'm like, man, that sounds a lot like the Jesus I read about in the Bible. In fact, when I look at us and I look at him, he seems more like that guy I read about in the red letters in the Bible than we do. We're sort of angry and hateful of people, and he seems to love people. So things started to unravel a little bit, and a string came out of the sweater. And I started pulling on the string. And then I started going to seminary training because I believed I had a call on my life to be a pastor. And in my training, somebody tells me, hey, you know that pre-trib rapture you believe in? It's total bunk. It's not in the Bible. I'm like, yeah, no, there's a verse in Thessalonians. No, let me explain why you don't take one verse in the Bible and make a completely overarching theology about it, why that's a terrible way to read and interpret the Bible. Let me show you passages that show the end of the world is going to be very different than the pre-trib rapture mindset. And by the way, God is not a God who takes the good out of the world so the bad can just get worse. Isaiah chapter 9 says that to the increase of Jesus' government and of peace, there will be no end. So either Isaiah's lying or we've misinterpreted what Paul meant by that passage in Thessalonians. Or here was the crazy thing they really told me. Paul may have been talking from a cultural tradition and not actually what's going to happen. Oh, when I heard that, we can take a Bible scripture and start to say, maybe Paul wasn't 100% right. Maybe he was speaking out of his cultural context when he said, slaves, go back to your masters. Something had to change in my world. And so I said, okay, I'm going to pull that string out so I don't believe that anymore. And then it just kept coming and coming and coming. And I had to hold it in for a long time because I was in a church where they just got very upset anytime I started to present a different way to look at the Bible. And finally, for that and a lot of reasons, had to step out. And I started speaking out of this story, and things started coming into focus. Oh, I see where it's wrong. And the response of people around me who love me, Paul's fallen away. We have to cut relationship with Paul. I get it. I have a hard message, and sometimes I'm just flat out an asshole because it's how God wired me. So I know it's hard to be around me sometimes when I'm talking about some of this stuff. But the need to defend that tribal mindset is so powerful. We're going to pick up stones, throw them. You've fallen away. Oh, it's so sad, Paul. He doesn't know how to live in honor. It's so sad. Paul doesn't realize that what he's saying isn't true of everybody. It's true of some churches, but it's not true of the spirit of our church. And Jesus said, if you stay in that mindset, you will no longer have eyes to see or ears to hear or hearts to understand. You'll believe QAnon theories. You'll believe when evangelists come and say voting for a Democrat is sin. You'll believe it because your eyes and ears and hearts have been dulled. So as all of that transformation started to happen, I started speaking it out. And it's been tough for people. And so our response then to go into our tribal need then turns not only from falling away to then like just pure cruelty. This is one of the things that has really surprised me. Well, honestly, it surprised me when I was a senior pastor of a church for 10 years, but it's been even more stark now of just the cruelty of American Christianity, how we believe being cruel in what we say to people is okay and endorsed by God. The same way the Pharisees believed God would endorse them murdering or having executed Jesus and Lazarus for standing against their tribal mentality. We've become really cruel evangelical Christians. And you think, how could that happen? I know these people. These are kind people. They care about people. They care about their family. They want to be good. They are good people. How could this cruelty come out of them? And so let me show you where we see that in the Bible. In Jonah chapter 4. I actually think the book of Jonah is a book every Christian should be required to read every single year so we can use it as a mirror to see who we are. Jonah is a man sent by God to teach a message to people that he does not like. They were the enemies of his people, a different race. And in fact, they might have even killed a relative of his somewhere along the line. And Jonah feels very validated and very much okay with hating these people. These are not my people. These are not godly people. These are not people that follow my religious tradition or live in my religious mindset. And I have every right to hate them. And when God said, Jonah, go preach to those people, you know the story, and we can argue about whether it's real or allegory, which I do on a fairly frequent basis. But the story is Jonah goes in the opposite direction of the town that God told him to go. He gets into a storm brought by God and thrown off the ship, swallowed by a big fish. Not a whale, by the way. The Bible does not say a whale. It says a big fish. I have people who keep saying, a whale is a mammal, not a fish. I'm like, yes. And the Bible says fish, not a whale. So read up. And the fish brings him back and spits him out on the shores of Nineveh. And Jonah has to go preach to these people, and he preaches like, repent or God's going to destroy you. And then the people repent. And so sometimes we read the story and say, yeah, Paul, but they repented. But Jonah reveals the true story. He's like, God, I knew you were sending me because you had mercy on these people, and I didn't want you to have mercy on these people. And so he preaches the message. The people of Nineveh repent. And what does Jonah do? Like, this is awesome. I preached a sermon and a whole group of people have been changed by my message. No, he was pissed off that God wasn't going to destroy the city. And it says he goes to a place high above the city, hoping that God will still kill them, because his cruelty was God endorsed, he felt. And if God didn't endorse his cruelty, Jonah said he wanted to be dead. He'd rather be dead than live in a world where God would have mercy on those people. Don't believe me? Let me read it to you in Jonah chapter 4, and then I'll wrap this up. I've been going for a while. But it displeased Jonah exceedingly. I love that. It could say what God did was exceedingly evil in the eyes of Jonah. Jonah judged God to be bad because he had mercy on these bad people. Sound like any Christians you know? If you're worshiping a God that has mercy on those bad people, you're not worshiping the God of the evangelical church. That's what evangelicals will tell you. And I would agree, because I believe evangelicals at times are worshiping a God that they created, because that God, as I heard somebody say in a wise statement once, that God is a God that will hate who they hate. That's a God they can control to agree with their mindset, like the Israelites at the edge of the Jordan River. It displeased Jonah exceedingly, and he was angry, and he prayed to the Lord and said, "Oh Lord, is not this what I said when I was yet in my country?" So he's like, I knew it. I told you I didn't want to go, because those people were going to hear your message and they were going to be moved by it in their hearts, and I didn't want that to happen. This is why I made haste to flee to Tarshish, said Jonah, for I knew that you are a gracious God and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, relenting from disaster. Therefore now, O Lord, please take my life from me, for it is better for me to die than to live. Jonah has judged God to be wrong if God doesn't agree with his mindset. And he says, I would rather be dead than live in a world where you demand I change my view of those people. Sound like any Christians you know today? Paul, you're asking us to see the Bible differently than the inerrant thing we believe it to be, and ignoring all the contradiction. We've just been able to close our eyes to them and not see them. All this time, you're asking us to open our eyes and see that? I'd rather be dead than live in that world, because that world is messy and uncomfortable and requires me to be in relationship with people I don't want to be in relationship with. I want to be in my comfy little church building on a Sunday morning, listening to the pastor teach about the sins that I can overcome, not the ones that force me to be somebody that I'm not. I'd rather be dead, Paul, than be that person. Verse 4 is the verse that I love in this whole book. Jonah chapter 4, verse 4. And the Lord said, do you do well to be angry? Let me do a modern day parable version of that. And the Lord said, how's that working out for you? How you doing with that? What does culture look like, Jonah, now that you're keeping that mindset? Are you the one making culture better, or are you the one that's most divisive and hateful in culture? I believe God is saying to you, evangelical church today, how's that working out for you to be as you're being? Are you making the culture better, or are you right in the middle of the division of it all? A culture that may just flat out collapse on itself if something doesn't change soon. How is that working out for you, evangelical church? And if you read the rest of the chapter, Jonah goes out still hoping above all hope that God will destroy these people. And he sits under this plant that God grew up for him to give him shade. And then the story says that God sent a worm to kill the plant. And so the plant dies. And now Jonah's really ticked off. He's like, not only are you not going to destroy these people, but you killed this plant that was my shade. And now I'm really pissed, God. And again, he says, I just want to be dead. You're not going to kill these people that I hate. And you killed my shade plant. Just kill me now, God. And God says again, how's that working out for you? Verse 9, God said to Jonah, do you do well to be angry for the plant? And And Jonah says, yes, I do well to be angry enough to die. Jonah's like, it's working out really well, God, because I'm going to sit right here and this is where I want to sit. And I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to be pissed at you. I'm going to be pissed at everybody around me. And it was working out really well. This is why I believe every Christian should have to read this passage like at least once a year and say, look at yourself, make yourself Jonah. Don't be the Ninevites. Don't be God. Be Jonah in the story. Jonah getting spit out of the whale didn't change his mindset. It didn't change his heart. It didn't open his eyes. He says, yes, I do well to be angry. And the Lord, verse 10 said, you pity the plant for which you did not labor, nor did not make it grow, which came into being in a night and perished in a night. And should I not pity Nineveh, that great city in which there are more than 120,000 persons who do not know their right hand from their left, and also much cattle? And that's the end of the story of Jonah. Jonah's not a great man in this story. He preached and 120,000 people were transformed by it, but he's mad that they did. And he never comes around. He's a generation that cannot change its mindset. And and God says, you care about a freaking plant. Your heart is hurt because a plant died, and you think I'm not supposed to give a blank about people that you don't think are good enough for my mercy. Nineveh, which, by the way, is on the site of what is modern day Mosul, which used to be the home capital of ISIS. And we would say, God, blow up that city. And God would say, you don't want me to have mercy on these people and their livestock, their ability to live? Christians, what have we become? We're so built around our tribal mindset. So how do we change? I don't want to leave us hopeless like the end of Jonah, but I do want to hang there for a second and say, are you Jonah? And is the end of the story like, hell no, I won't go. I will not change. I've known my religious tenets. I've known my political beliefs. I've voted this way for too long. Abortion has been the only thing that matters in my voting life for so long. I cannot change to think that God cares about that young woman who's making the choice to have an abortion, or cares about that doctor more than my need to impose legal religion on the country. I cannot change from that belief. It's too ingrained. Or would you say, no, I don't want to miss the promise of God. I don't want to be a generation that just marches around the desert while the next generation gets to see the promise of the world fulfilled. I don't want to have eyes that are blind and ears that are stopped up. So how do we change? How do we not be Jonah, who finishes at the end of the story saying, yeah, I do well to be mad like this, and I intend to stay so until I die? We need to ask ourselves this question on a regular basis. Is there anything I know to be true? Anything that I know beyond the shadow of a doubt that is right, that might not be true today? It may have even been right in a past season. It may have been something that was important for a time and a season, but if I don't progress and be willing to change and see other facets of the character of God, I'm going to miss what he's doing in a season, just like Jonah, just like the Pharisees, just like the Hebrews at the edge of the Jordan River. I don't want that to be the end of my story. I want to be a Romans 12:2 Christian, not conformed to my bubble, but being willing to be transformed by the renewing of our minds so I can see what God is doing in this season. Isaiah 43 says, a new thing is springing up in the desert. Can't you perceive it? Do you not have eyes to see? Do you not have a heart to understand? All it takes is us saying, God, whatever God looks like to you, Even being willing to say, God, if you're different than what I've always believed you are, I want to know. I want to know truth. I don't want to rally around my tribal belief system and my tribal traditions. I want to know truth. And if there's a truth out there that's beyond my bubble, burst my bubble. And let me promise you, that burst bubble is messy and uncomfortable. And sometimes it makes you mad. I don't want to have to learn new things. I want the comfort of what I've always known. But the promise of God is not in staying in our comfort zone. The Bible has little value for comfort. The Bible says bad things about people that seek comfort. It says good things about people who get comfort when they're walking through the valley of the shadow of death, but not good things about people that seek comfort when they're already well-to-do and not caring about people that are hurting around them. So I'm just offering you a messy, sometimes really unpleasant, angry life. So why would you do that, Paul? Because it's where life is. As a pastor I've followed many years of my life says, cemeteries are orderly and neat and clean. Nurseries are dirty and messy and loud. But one of those spaces has life and one has death. Yes, we can have neatness and order and believe the same things we've always believed. We just have to choose not to have new life come into our life. We just have to decide, I want to cling to the old so much, I'm not going to worry about the fact that I'm living in a neat place of comfort that's not endorsed by the Bible. And I'm not going to worry that I have to throw people under the bus to protect that belief system. But if you lean into the new, where Jesus himself says, love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And you know who your neighbor is? It's those foreign people, those people of other religions, those tax collectors who are traitors against, it's those fallen away people who are traitors against your religion. Those are your neighbors that you have to love. And how you love them is going to be the evidence of how much you really love God. It's like I always say about the Constitution. People love to say, I love the Constitution, but you don't know that you love the Constitution until you're willing to defend your enemy's right to free speech. We love free speech right up until the point that it protects my enemy's right to say something about me. And then we find out if we really love the Constitution or we just love the freedom the Constitution gives us. I love God and I love my neighbor as long as my neighbor is the person I sit by in the church service on Sunday or that homeless person that I feed at a homeless feed on Thanksgiving. But God, if you're going to make me love those people, I'd rather be dead. I'd rather live in my neat little world that doesn't have new life, that has dulled eyes and stopped up ears and hearts that can't understand. But for those of us in this season who are saying, I can see something that the prophets of old longed to see. I want that. Oh, the deal is I have to walk through the mess of giving up a whole bunch of beliefs of my past. That's hard. Oh, and the price is that I'm going to have stones thrown at me from my old tribe. No, I don't like that. But I get to see something that the prophets longed to see in the past. Okay, deal. And we normally don't make that deal with a deal, I'm in. We make it with a sigh and like, okay, God, I'll do it. I'll do it. Will you do it? Let me speak a blessing over you, over something really hard that I'm asking you to do. To step out of tribal tradition and into the new thing that God's doing in the season. And I just join my spirit with you. I can even feel the sorrow of relationship lost, of community lost. And I'm so sorry. It isn't God that took that from you. It's the evangelical people. It's the church of your youth. They decided to be Jonah and choose to be dead rather than in a place where God would have mercy on people that they didn't want him to have mercy. I love you for it, though. And I speak for God when I say, I am so proud that you've made this courageous choice. And the God of heaven, the spirit that is bigger than the universe, the container that all of this is in, says, that's the point of life, is to learn this lesson that you're learning. Shutting down in comfort, shutting down and just taking care of you and yours is the opposite of the lesson you exist for. But you are hearing and seeing what the prophets of old have longed to see. And God, the creator, the being over the universe, is so, so happy that you did. And I bless you with my spirit. Just feel that spirit from me of joy and hope in the midst of mess and discomfort come to you. Galatians 6:9 says, do not grow weary in doing good. Do not grow weary in fully pursuing the truth of God. For in the proper time, you will reap a harvest if you don't give up. It's worth it. I can't promise you it's not going to be messy. I can't promise you it's not going to be painful. In fact, from my experience, I probably can promise the opposite. But I would encourage you to go back and watch my Bible talk about Hebrews chapter 11 and 12 that says it is worth it. So I bless you. I bless your household. I bless your oikos, which is what that word household means in the Greek, your sphere of influence, your family, your coworkers, the people in your circle. Be blessed. And out of that blessing, you pour blessing out on those people who are beyond your circle so that we can know the good and perfect will of God for the season. Isn't that cool? Let me invite you one more time to be a part of supporting the work of old Pastor Paul, as I used to be known on TikTok, and the Nonpartisan Evangelical. You can give a donation, a gift, if you will, on Venmo. Note that it's not a tax-deductible gift. Or you can join on Patreon and subscribe. Just point your phone at the screen if you're watching on YouTube, and it'll take you right to it. There's cool stuff you get if you subscribe on Patreon. And if you give a gift on Venmo, you'll get a message from me saying you are awesome. This is the message of the season, guys. If you're an evangelical watching this and you're like, I'm so angry at Paul, let me ask you to consider, do you do well? How's it working out for you? Are you supposed to want the Ninevites, those of other beliefs, of other races, of other religions, to be destroyed by God, of other gender preferences or sexual identities? Do you do well to want them to have second-class status in the society because somehow you believe a Jesus that said Sodom will have a better judgment day than Capernaum, and that some are born eunuchs, some choose to be that way, and some are made that way by others, wants you to hate gay people? There's freedom in loving people. I love getting to love people. And I challenge you to walk into the mess of that. and see what that would look like for you. I bless you to be on this journey with me. It's worth it. It's so, so worth it. May God bless you and keep you and make his face to shine upon you. Amen.